It's T. Watts and TR on the YouTube and podcast homes for BamaOnline.com. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BOL, alongside site publisher Tim Watts. It is Kentucky week for Alabama football. It is opening week for Alabama basketball, so no shortage of topics. First and foremost, something I got to know, though, Tim Watts, have the Christmas trees at Casa de Watts. And yes, that's plural, trees.
Yeah.
Are
No,
they up yet?
they are not up yet, but the Halloween decorations are coming down this morning. They're laying in there, and she did the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce skeleton in the front yard, and it's
Oh,
laying in there, and her cat is like scratching itself on its foot. So I don't trust cats. They'll see a skeleton, they just love on a skeleton. They don't have any common sense when it comes to that stuff. But they're laying there, so I would think the Christmas decorations are not far behind it.
yeah, coming up. Thanksgiving, just a few weeks away. We like to talk about the holidays here on T Watts and TR, but we're going to talk a lot of football today, as you might expect. We're going to get into our roundtable mailbag. It's loaded once again, Tim. We always appreciate our
Absolutely.
subscribers there at BOL helping us out with some comments and questions on the roundtable in that mailbag. Residual thoughts from Alabama 42, LSU 28. I'm guessing you've got a few, maybe even one involving the hit that Dallas Turner had on Jaden Daniels there early in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what's funny about sports is every week the number of grown men, grown people going to the internet to express their refereeing skills. Like they're unbelievable. That's like the highlight of the game for them is judging something off of something a referee did, the holding. I saw Tennessee had double the penalties against UConn, so I guess the Connecticut bias is also.
Jim Moore Jr. Jim
I
Moore
mean,
Jr. bias.
it's living large. They had double the penalties and they won by like 56. So it's kind of funny to me. I mean, also one of the things is football's soft, it's tag football. Hey, he's a thug. He made a tackle. I mean, they looked at it, they reviewed it, they said I didn't think it was targeting, but I'll be honest. Unlike the rest of social media, I don't really know the rules of targeting. I have not figured it out. Yes, last year with Bryce Young looked 10 times worse than what Dallas did. I agree it was probably roughing, piling into the quarterback. I agree with all of that. But, at the end of the day, I don't even know how much it mattered. I mean, Daniels was out of the game. It changed the whole complexion of the game. The Bama defense had a couple of good stops, had a 14-point lead. They'd scored 6 touchdowns out of 7 possessions. So they're going to have to stop Bama twice and then score everything just to get back every time they get the ball, just to get back in the game. But it's a shame. It really was a great game, and most of the discussion's been on that one play with Dallas Jackson, but unbelievable. I love sports. That's why I watch sports. So to watch those two quarterbacks, go at it, I thought it was amazing. Dueling banjos, I thought they were both great. I thought it was two good teams. LSU's offense was as good as we thought they were. Alabama's defense stood up like they have all year, basically, when they had to have a stop. The Dallas deflection and the interception. They had a great fourth down stop in the first quarter. Again, really doing really good job on those fourth and shorts this year. So I thought it was a great game. And, unfortunately, everybody's just talking about one play by Dallas Turner, who's a very physical, very tough football player. And that's to me was, I guess, disappointment that's all the discussion instead of the actual game.
Yeah, and we even heard Nick Saban yesterday. Now, Brian Kelly, you listen to the two coaches on Monday, and they both did exactly what you would think they would do and should do, right? If you're Brian Kelly and you've got a upset fan base, especially, you're going to say, well, we thought it checked all the boxes of targeting, and
Mm-hmm.
we've sent it into the league for review. And I'm
Sure.
sure that was the case with Bryce's hit against Tennessee a year ago in Knoxville. So,
And yeah,
about what you would expect to hear from the coaches. Nick, I thought yesterday it did sound like coming from him, it was a little too close for comfort because of the
sure.
subjective nature and how targeting is called and enforced.
Absolutely.
And also because you lose a guy for the next half of the next week if it is targeting.
Sure.
So that's a possibility. But if you think Nick Saban and this defensive staff is going to change how they coach and teach guys to get after the quarterback, no, that's not going to happen either.
No, I mean, it goes back Quinn Ewers, the face mask against Ole Miss. I mean, I think people are just short-sighted. Quinn Ewers and Dallas Turner met in the air like Superman's.
Yeah, Quinn jumped into that
And
essentially
Dallas jumped into him. There's like two guys
and
catching
planted
each.
him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dallas, just the bigger, stronger guy, ended up flipping that over the face mask. I mean, that was a face mask. One guy's running one way, the other guy's running. So I guess Dallas has got that reputation for fans when they lose. But I mean, there's always chronic complainers. You know what I mean? But as far as Brian Kelly, it makes sense. I would want an explanation. Shoot, I do want an explanation. I want an explanation on that 1st and 1. I want to know some of this stuff. I just don't know enough rules, the referee rules, like everybody else on social media who's got the rules just memorized. I really don't believe that's true, but I don't know enough about the rules to always be complaining about them.
Yeah, well, you get things that come in like live ball foul versus dead ball foul, spot of the foul.
Yes, it's confusing.
And that was something I thought the White Hat could have done a better job of during the game Saturday night. I know it's not his role to be sort of the official on the broadcast that you
Yeah.
have on these games, but some clarity, like the review of the Jaden Daniels situation, and they had time. We all know that because Daniels was down, but couldn't there at least have been an announcement that we did in fact review the hit and it was deemed not targeting?
If you watch an NBA game and they review a play, you look up on your TV and the referee's like leaned into your business and he is explaining exactly
to the broadcast crew.
Yes, they're explaining exactly. I mean, he leans in. He's in your private. He's in your.
Now they're at a place in basketball where they can be in that conversation. Football, obviously, they're in the box, but still, they're like you said. There's clarity provided.
Yeah, there is, and I think that just gets confusing. I'll be honest. I don't know what targeting is. I did not think Dallas was targeting. I definitely thought Bryce last year was targeting. I watched the NFL. I can't understand what I saw. I can't remember which game. Maybe the Texans. I saw the easiest tackle of a quarterback ruled roughing the passer when there was literally the only thing he could do was grab him, and they both went down to the ground. So I don't necessarily know when it comes to the quarterback. I just assume if you hit them, you're getting a flag.
Well, and I've said it basically. Said it for a few years now. It's still amazing to me how much more the NFL protects its quarterbacks in comparison to the college game. I mean, college game, they pretty much leave the quarterbacks, only the strong survive.
They're a tight end.
But even in the NFL, where it is much more stringent, perhaps to the point of overdoing it, there are still quarterbacks in the league that don't get calls that other quarterbacks get. Even the game last night with the Jets and the Chargers, I think you could make a case that those two guys, even Herbert at this point, doesn't get calls that Tom Brady used to get.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, going back to Dallas, I think it definitely was a 15-yard unnecessary roughness. Anytime you take your body weight and drive a quarterback in the ground, you're going to get that. So I'm not arguing the penalty. I'm arguing the target. And I just didn't think it was enough to be a target. And I don't know what it mattered in the grand scheme of things. You know what I mean? It's not like that was the drive going down to tie the ball game or take the lead with 38 seconds left. So maybe
I felt like Alabama, if it needed to, could have probably scored in the low 50s if it needed to.
I mean, they missed two
field goals. It was 42 points early in the fourth.
Missed two field goals. I mean, they were said if they left 48 points on the table, they could have easily got in the 50s.
Yeah.
You make those two things, and they definitely just wanted to run out, get that game over with and, survive to the next one. But I thought it was a good game. I thought, I was kind of surprised at the backlash at Brian Kelly from some of the vocal LSU fans. I mean, he, the guy took over a team with like 35, 40 scholarship players, had a pretty good season last year. I mean, his losses this year, who's he lost to? FSU, Ole Miss, and Alabama. It's 3 top 10 teams. Defense is terrible. It's just not good, but I thought they did what they had to do. They're like, first of all, Alabama's really good doing what? Throwing the bombs. Well, they're not throwing a bomb on us. Anything Jalen threw deep, they
were playing it. Yeah, they were playing soft, which ultimately helped Alabama run the ball.
Absolutely. Jalen had the entire field. When Jalen pulled and ran, I'll tell you one thing that was like everybody's like, use a spy, but dude, there ain't many spies that can get to either of those quarterbacks. I mean, they're fast. They're hard to tackle. I mean, you saw Jalen. Harold Perkins tried to break bad, hit him at the goal line, and Jalen just kind of looked back at Harold Perkins, who's a very physical tackler.
Yeah.
He's a big guy. Jaeden Daniels to be a skinny looking guy, man, he's hard to bring down. I mean, you
Mhm.
can't. There ain't no arm tackling these guys. So you're talking about spy them. There's just not many guys that match up with them. They both ran the ball really well. Going back to second watch, it was a lot of fun just to watch those two guys go to work.
It was. It was not, as we talked about on second watch, it was not a night to be an inside linebacker,
No,
really
that's
a linebacker of any kind, because you said it with Perkins. I mean, when he wasn't dealing or having to deal with a guy like, Jalen Milrow, he's trying to deal with Kendrick Law out in space, which I thought
mhm.
Alabama did a nice job of. Tommy Reese, let's give that guy his flowers
Yeah,
after that game playing.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
also, when Perkins wants to attack, now he's got Jam Miller
Hmm.
looping out of the backfield,
Uh,
and they
yeah.
hit him. Milrow hits him for an explosive play.
I
It's
tell
just
you who hit Harold
tough
Perkins
night.
is Tyler Booker.
Yeah,
Booker absolutely crushed him, got in that second level.
yeah.
Big boys out there moving. And, Harold's that guy he's like find ball, get ball. You know what I mean? He just goes forward. So every now and then you're going to get him, looking. Tyrann Mathieu was that way for LSU. He's running forward. It don't matter. He's going to eventually he's probably that kid that got nipped by a bumper every now and then in the street because he just ran across the street. He didn't look. They're very aggressive.
Run into parked cars.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very aggressive football players. Um, but I think overall, I think Milrow, you can't really say enough about Milrow, some of the plays he made. If you want to look at his development, I keep going back to that like 3rd and 9 in the first quarter where he rolls to the left, a lot of pressure. He has literally got a defensive pocket collapsing on him. There are 5 grown men surrounding Jalen Milrow. I thought he was going to throw it out of bounds. I thought he was going to run out of bounds, and he stepped up slightly, threw a dime drop to Jace, went up the
yeah.
sideline for wherever went for. Is a big game. It's a huge play. But also, I noticed Jace was back in protection, and when it collapsed, he snuck out, threw a hand up like, "Hey," and
Stayed in the
Jalen
play.
dropped it to him. So the awareness there was really good. The pass to Jam Miller, boy, that was that was right on time. That was so much for there's no touch, but obviously I think Milrow is, the thing I like about him is his confidence. This whole time he is like he feels it. He feels it.
Blank,
Yeah.
blank. Let
Yeah,
all naysayers know he
yeah,
thrives
he
on it. He does.
he feels it. And obviously a guy really happy to be playing the sport. So good for him. And the defense stepping up when they had to. The offensive line, I mean, they and I know LSU's depleted. I'm not sure. It's kind of odd. We talked about this like the year Alabama went to Baton Rouge and they had no fans. Well, that was surreal. But seeing that LSU team with not a lot of defensive talent, because if you think LSU's a great state for recruiting, they have a lot of people per capita, just like the state of Alabama does. And even at the worst times of Alabama, Auburn, LSU, the worst times of their football program, they have NFL guys on defense. So it's just kind of hard to see an LSU defense that falling off from what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, the transfer portal, it can go both ways, and
Yeah.
especially the more you go in on it. And LSU really all in on the portal on the defensive side. And this year it hasn't really hit for them. And there's guys like Mason Smith on that defensive line still trying to get back from that knee injury last
Yeah.
year. He's not himself. Makai Wingo doesn't play in the game. But again, give Alabama credit. Didn't really waste time. Had the opening drive that didn't result in points, but as you said, from that point forward, it was pretty much touchdown,
Yeah.
touchdown, touchdown, missed field goal, touchdown.
I thought the play call, the only thing I would question in the whole play calling or the offense was at the end of the first half. You talked about it last week. Can you score too quick? I kind of felt like LSU had one timeout left, minute and change left. If you run the ball one time, you still have 3 timeouts. Plus, you're running the ball well. You very well could score, but take some time off. And Jalen did run out of bounds twice, so I don't know if that was the play call or exactly. I don't know if he's supposed to be stopping the clock, but you left him
Yeah.
with the timeout. And as you saw, that was too much time with that offense. That was
I agree, but I kind of go the other way too. I don't know if Jalen's at a point in his development where that's kind of advanced, right? Hey,
mhm.
we want to score, but don't score too quick, right? I
Oh,
think
I'm just talking to. I
this
just mean that.
offense,
I'm sorry. I just mean a simple handoff to Roy Dell
oh
up the
yeah,
middle
yeah, yeah,
and
I can
test
see
him.
that.
No,
I
but
see
Jaden's
that.
going to. Yeah, they
But
that's as nitpicking as I've got for this week.
and I agree. I mean, that's to me, that's AJ McCarron as a senior type of management that
Yeah,
you're
that's
asking
fair.
of your quarterback. And And with 35 seconds left in the second quarter, the Alabama defense has LSU in 3rd and 9 at about its own 30. And
Yeah.
at that point, you're thinking the very best LSU could do is a long field goal attempt. And the next thing you know, we're talking
Daniels.
about a 21-21 game
I
at
mean,
the half.
Daniels again with those legs. I mean, not only is he, the thing about him is that he's stronger than he looks. He's fast, and he also kind of runs scared.
Yeah.
Like that guy that runs so hard, like he does. That's not an insult to him. That is like the best kind of running where you like don't want anybody to touch you. That's the three things combined with that Joker. And yeah, I mean, he's running. I mean, they had chances. Saban highlighted a play where they were trying to spy him, but
Yeah. You might
I
as well
just
have had Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase and spies like us spying the
yeah,
other
it's
night. For
just
both these teams, it was an awful night to
well,
have
Jaden's
spy
touchdown before
responsibility.
the half was a thing of beauty where he looked like he was throwing it out in the flat. But I mean, I've been saying he kind of when he runs, he kind of looks like Adrian Peterson. And some of my Bama friends were like, I don't see it. And I think they saw it better this weekend because he's a big guy running. That's a big joker running down that field when he's pulling it. I thought he made some good passes too, especially getting out of his comfort zone of nothing deep. So, I mean, that obviously works for Alabama's benefit when you're dropping, five guys back there, maybe even more.
You're going to play that two high safeties. Alabama should be able to run the football with the
Yeah,
quarterback in the
and
backs, and
and
they were able to do that.
that offensive line just keeps looking a little bit better each week, don't they?
Yeah, they do. We'll talk about Jaeden Roberts. This has been a Jaeden Roberts stand show for a while now.
Yeah,
So I mean,
yeah,
we're not late to that party, but we'll
yeah,
talk some more about him because he's been a revelation of sorts for that Alabama offensive line. So now on the heels of this huge win, Tim, what's your biggest concern for Alabama as it goes on the road? Two conference games left, both of those on the road. Kentucky coming off a road win at Mississippi State to gain bowl eligibility. So with that secured for the 8th straight season under Mark Stoops, can't say enough about the job that guy's done up
yeah.
there. What worries you maybe a little bit about this trip, if anything?
It's the same thing. I mean, it's kind of like I think being on the road is actually a benefit here because you go on the road, you kind of get your back up. You hear the boos and the yells and everything from the fans walking around, so you're able to get a little bit more energy. But it's kind of got that feel of that Arkansas game. You sandwich it between some good games. I do think this team's level-headed enough, immature enough. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. I've never felt that Arkansas got enough credit for what they did in that game versus Alabama. It wasn't just Alabama was breaking down. Arkansas made plays, and if you look at them, they exploded this week. Arkansas has had nothing but close losses, and then beat Florida obviously, which was a huge win for them. So they're a very competitive team. So probably didn't respect them enough because of their record. But I think that this team knows what it's got to do. Still, all of its goals are ahead of it, but they've got to win. And I keep saying this, it's just not for the fans, but for the team. It's just a game by game situation where you're just worried, looking at what you did last game, trying to improve on that or sustain what you're doing well and just keep going because you've got, again, two SEC road games, left on your schedule and not really road tested.
Yeah, and you got some injuries, right? Especially on the defensive side coming out of LSU with Jalen Key at safety and Deontay once again, unfortunately, at the inside linebacker position. I guess if there's some silver linings there, you've already dealt with some injuries to both these guys. Key more so, I think, in the preseason. Deontay early in the season. So a situation where you should have some guys ready to go if that is in fact the case that you're in next man up mode.
Yeah, I think the depth's really helped this team. Again, confidence with this team, the way they react and interact with each other, and I think confidence is huge. You see those guys picking each other up. I mean, you get beat on that first drive, mass confusion. LSU drops a bomb on you. I didn't see any finger pointing or head dropping or anything else, and I know that that's not the way you want to start a half or end a half, but also at the same time, you got to play 60 minutes. If any team in the country plays 60 minutes, it's Alabama. So, down early, up early, having to hold on late. This team has been very consistent. But I thought that game offensively was the first through fourth quarter game where we didn't, like you said, we didn't see a lot of 3 and outs or any of that stuff.
Yeah, Saban even went as far as to describe it after the game Saturday and then again on Monday is the most complete performance. I don't think there's any argument there. And, this is a Kentucky team that obviously early kickoff on the road really want to try to get off to a good start. I don't think Alabama necessarily, as we know now, with the way that it has performed in the second half, needs to jump out 7-10, 14-0. Although that would be great. That's fine. You would take that. But you don't want to be in a situation like Florida was up there about 6 weeks ago when Kentucky absolutely ambushed the Gators. I think that's the key here. Just the psyche of this team and keep the game the way it needs to be early and don't put yourself or find yourself in a little bit of a hole there on the road.
Yeah, I think that is the key. And like you said, now Florida's been an up and down team all year. I will say Alabama's much more consistent. I know you know that, but walking in there, feeling yourself, some confidence, and it has to be motivating that you can win the SEC West, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you control your destination. You can win the SEC West and take it out of everybody else's hands. So I certainly think that helps.
Yeah, no doubt. And not just the West, but certainly that's the immediate goal. Let me ask you this about bigger picture goals. We're going to have another ranking, the TV show, as I call it, the college football playoff rankings, because that's all it is. I mean, it's a television show trying to create some intrigue. I get it. Fan interest. We're all about that here at BamaOnline.com. But where Alabama is likely to find itself still at this point, there's still a lot of football to be played. Is there a scenario that you could imagine where Alabama runs the table through Atlanta, sits there at 12-1, is Alabama, is from the SEC, and gets left out of the 4-team race?
I can't, but also I know how much football is left. You know what I mean? I think
Mm.
that's for me, it's hard to be to expect everybody to win. I mean, you watch, we've been saying this, but if you watch more than just one team, college football, shoot, Saturday alone, everybody was kicking field goals to get into overtime or to win. Texas is holding on for its dear life against
K-State.
K-State. I mean, that was a very, interesting morning. Every game you should enjoy. I keep saying it, you better enjoy those wins, man. They're not going to be as easy as some of the teams in the past. So no, I still think I can't imagine Alabama. I mean, Georgia would likely be riding what kind of winning streak would that be? They'd have to break. I mean,
High 20s.
27,
Yeah.
28, 27.
Yeah.
So they'd have to, their best win would be over the two-time national champion breaking their 27 game winning streak or whatever that would be. So that's going to be a monumental win. But I see the arguments for other teams as well. I don't think you punish teams for playing good teams. I've never felt that way. So Alabama and Texas had the nerve to play each other. I don't think you punish teams for doing that when they lose that game.
Yeah. And as you pointed out, and we know, a lot of football left. And some of these teams are going to play each other, right?
Yeah,
Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia.
yeah,
Texas has played in a way of late. And I know the schedule sets up great for the Longhorns the rest of the month before the Big 12 championship game. I still don't totally trust Texas, even in this scenario,
yeah.
to get home. So a lot to still figure
Yeah, I
out.
mean, Alabama still got a lot of business. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not. There's a lot of winning at Kentucky, winning at Auburn, and beating Georgia.
In Atlanta.
That
Yeah.
is not a that is
Like
beating.
3 road games it would
Yeah, I'm
have to
about to say
win.
beating Georgia is not a given. You know what I mean? So this thing can play out, 50
Georgia
different ways.
Georgia hasn't beaten a Nick Saban team though in the state of Georgia, so
Yeah, okay.
there's a way you can
There's
look
that.
at.
There's that for it. I'll just say this is like if you started that first game, second game, and then look where we're at. If you're not an Alabama fan enjoying the season, maybe there's other hobbies. Maybe there's seriously. I mean, like after the South Florida game to be here, my most, we all got that pessimistic fan, right? I've got a few of them, and even the most pessimistic are enjoying this team. I mean, you talked about it preseason. I'm enjoying because I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't know what this
It's
team
kind of
was.
like the 2014 team, isn't it?
Yeah,
That way with Blake Sims at quarterback
yeah,
and had the loss at Ole Miss, and then you kind of went to Baton Rouge that year, and that game for the longest looked like LSU was going to win it. Somehow Alabama got that game into overtime and won, and then you came out of that game thinking, "Hey, I think Alabama still had to beat Mississippi State, which was number 1 in the nation
right.
back in 2014. That was a fun season too because Then you had home games in, I want to say Mississippi State in November, Auburn in November, and that shootout in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
Um, that was a pretty fun run too, with a
That's what I
team
was
that
saying.
you didn't kind of think would be there.
If you haven't enjoyed this season, I mean, check your pulse, find a hobby other than this, maybe go in, because it's been, to me, it's been one of the funnest. And I get it's definitely frustrating a lot, at
Taxing.
times. But I
Mhm.
like the not knowing, and I like seeing what we didn't know kind of develop. Like
We're movie people. Yeah,
that
we're
offensive
movie
line
people.
to me has did a little bit better job each week, and I like the aggressiveness, like you said, Jaeden Roberts. I mean, Kate Proctor's gotten better. We're not going off just the LSU game with this. It has been a consistent, and part of
Mhm.
that is you get thrown to the wolves with a pretty good defensive line and Bo Davis running them. So you start out like, you get seasoned pretty quick. They throw you right on the grill in that scenario, and then you kind of work yourself down from there. But yeah, heck of a season so far.
Speaking of fun to watch, Tim, how about Alabama men's basketball with a
Mm,
32-point win over Morehead State Monday night at Coleman Coliseum to open the 2023-2024 campaign? Alabama with 50 or more in each half. And the newcomers that we wanted to check out, Grant Nelson, Aaron Estrada, Stevenson, these guys, I'd say they pretty much lived up to the billing, although don't forget about the returning guys like Mark Sears, Rylan Griffin. It was a very good start, I'd say.
yeah, I loved Mark Sears' energy. I mean, he went in there like he was fighting for loose balls. He was scrapping for rebounds. He was barking orders. Just a very smooth game. And again, Alabama, Alabama basketball is really reaching into where you want them to be, because your friends that have never watched hoops are now asking you about them. And they're
Yeah.
telling you the most obvious thing is like, hey, Grant Nelson's really good. They didn't know it till they didn't know it till last night, but they're watching the game. I was very proud of him. But he looked really good. And, I know it wasn't a great team, but I mean, there's 21 point favorite, and Alabama just completely dominated that team from start to finish. But we've seen Alabama early struggle with games like this, in the history of men's basketball. So seeing them come out, have fun, hit jumpers, 13 to 13 at the free throw line at one point, 8 to 12 from the arc at one point, rebounding, challenging. And I felt that team they played wasn't bad. I didn't think they were a terrible team. They had a couple guys that could get buckets, and obviously at a different level. But I think a good first test for Alabama, and then with more coming down the road.
Yeah, I mean that non-conference schedule, it's solid as it always is under Nate Oates. And agreed. I think you saw maybe at least the early stages of a 7 or 8 man rotation. But again, you had 10 guys play, I think 10 or more minutes for Alabama in the game. So Nate
Mhm.
obviously feels like he's got some depth. I think my bigger question, and we weren't going to get an answer to this in a game like Morehead State, and we likely won't until we get more into some of the non-conference opponents that Alabama has in front of it. Just sturdiness in the paint, right? As far as
Yeah.
the true post presence, not just offensively, really not offensively, more so in the way of rim protection, rebounding, those kind of things.
Yeah, I think they're very athletic. They're very physical. You could tell. What was nice to see was the energy that they felt walking out on that basketball court. I mean,
Mm.
they showed up. They were playing hard. Grant Nelson was feeling that crowd. That wait till he gets into a big SEC game. Grant's going to lose it, but he was. You could see that energy. They were fired up. The fans. It wasn't a big crowd, but you could hear them. They're pretty boisterous out there. But they competed. They challenged. Pretty much think, again, he in the preseason, we saw him lose 2 games trying to figure out his roster. Also, they didn't have Sears in the last one. And now they've got all these guys he's going to play, as you said, to whittle down to his SEC tournament type, SEC schedule, type roster. So it'll get whittled down. But basically, a lot of guys are auditioning for that 8 or 9 man role coming up for the SEC.
Yeah, it comes back to threes and frees, right? With Nate
Yeah.
Oates teams, if they make 10 threes and
Yeah.
only need 23 attempts to get there, that's a low number of attempts for Alabama under Oates. It's usually
Absolutely.
30 or more. Make 10 of 23 and then shoot 31 of 38 from the free throw line. They're going to win a lot of those basketball games. Well, Tim, you about ready to jump into the BOL Roundtable Mailbag. Once again, we got a pretty good batch of questions and comments waiting on us.
Let's go for it.
Let's
do
do
it.
it. How about
Let's do it.
the deep breath there? From Tim
I
Watt.
haven't looked at this one.
You gotta buckle up. You
Hey,
gotta
we
have the
love
chin strap ready. You gotta have the mouth guard in.
those round table questions. We love them. Every now and then when I don't look, I get 8 from one of my guys. One of our favorite posters will send us 8, so some will be risque. So let's see what they've got for us.
Tuscaloosa's like Mr. Wrestling back in my youth in the pro wrestling. There was like Mr. Wrestling 1, Mr. Wrestling 2, Mr. Wrestling 7. Yeah, we love Tuscaloosa.
If he hears this, he will literally copy this video and send it to all of his friends. He is going to be that's the best compliment you could have given.
Mama, I made it. Yeah. DR back here gets us going in the roundtable mailbag. Asks your thoughts on the improvement of OL play these last couple of weeks. Jaeden Roberts appears to be just what the doctor ordered. Any updates on Dalcourt and Ferguson? Well, the health of both of those guys pretty much provided that little bit of a crack that Jaeden Roberts needed against Texas A&M to jump in there at right guard. And Jaeden didn't just ease his way through that crack. He kicked that door down. And I just don't foresee, other than injury, taking Jaeden Roberts out of the lineup anytime soon. It feels like, Tim, with Roberts at right guard and Booker at left guard now, you got a couple of people mover types that also play with some edge. I talked about this on Second Watch. You watch Jaeden Roberts, he's looking for work all the time. If he's got his guy, he finishes his guy. And if he finishes his guy, he's looking for the next guy.
Yeah, he looks like an athletic tight end running around out there, doesn't he? He's a big guy. Look at his picture. Now, he was a guy in high school we liked. He's a little bit on the heavier side, wasn't as lean. Not uncommon to see a guy turn into what he is, but I mean, he looks like a monster. And you said like the work, yes, he is not. He'll get his guy, he'll go get your guy. He wants everybody's guy. He's like that movie Gary Oldman in The Professional, and they said, "Bring me everybody." I think Jaeden is like, "Hey, I'll block them all, light them up." So yeah, and that energy, they're going to feed off that energy. Booker's always been that kind of player, chasing them down. One of them had a great block pancake to Mason Smith. Was that Jaeden or was that Booker? I can't even remember with the clip. It was one of those two. Put Mason on his knee. I think it was Roberts because it was the right guard. Put Mason, a big guy, strong guy, of course, coming off the injury, put him on his knees. And you got a little nasty there. When you get a little nasty at those guards position, they're athletic, they can move. You can do a whole lot of things.
I talked about it back in fall camp that Alabama's situation at guard was ideal because Jaeden Roberts has been around. And I think that's where that shows up in the sort of physical transformation that you talked about, Tim, because as much as we talk about guys like J.C. Latham and Caden Proctor and Tyler Booker, guys who walked in early and made an impact, typically what needs to happen is time, not just in terms of offensive line play, but strength and conditioning, transforming bodies, those type of things. And that's where Jaeden Roberts is at. This guy isn't just a year or two into the program. And that's why I felt like Terrence Ferguson and Jaeden Roberts, if they were a lot of other places going into this season, they both would have been starters already. I look at Florida with Damian George at right tackle starting, the former Alabama offensive lineman, and that pretty much tells me that maybe at Florida, both those guys would have been starters going into the season. So real luxury to have that kind of depth. And also DR back wants to know, Tim, is there anything new, speaking of offensive linemen and IMG, by the way, Jordan Seaton, the elite 2024 offensive tackle?
Nothing new. Alabama's did a really good job there. There's so many other teams involved. The number one offensive tackle, which they did pull off last year with Caden Proctor. Wolf does a really good job bonding with his offensive lineman, but that's been a rather quiet recruitment considering he's named Alabama like top of the list several times, but not a lot has really went on from there. He's taken visits, hope to get him back to Tuscaloosa again, but Alabama's in the mix for that. Had a good haul last year, did a really good job with interior guys this year that we probably don't talk about enough, but yeah, they're still involved for Seaton, but just nothing's like really broke free. I think the visits are going to tell the tale with him. And of course, you get to this point, you're, what are we, 6 weeks from signing day? Not far um, from signing day. So they're really not going to tip their hand until they sign, if they plan to sign early. So still involved, heavily involved.
Stu Hart in the roundtable mailbag asks, what kind of defensive schemes might Alabama see uh, against Kentucky, or might we see from Bama against Kentucky? How will
Mhm.
Alabama go about defending Kentucky? I can tell you where it starts, Stu. It starts with trying to tackle Ray Davis, the little running back, who Alabama did see a year ago in Tuscaloosa when he was with Vanderbilt. He transferred to Kentucky just in SEC play. If you talk about SEC play alone, Ray Davis right now averaging over 110 yards per game. Here's the thing: Alabama against running back first run games this season, maybe not so much with the quarterback involved as much. And I don't think you'll see Devin Leary that way this week, Tim. They've hung in there against the backs pretty good, whether it's Quinshawn Judkins, whether it was Jalen Wright of Tennessee. Logan Diggs last Saturday night wasn't especially effective. Well, he didn't really need to be because Jaden Daniels
Yeah.
was so explosive. But
Yeah.
I think that's where it starts, and then you get into Devin Leary and those receivers for Kentucky, Tavian Robinson. I love Barry and Brown, have for a couple
Yeah.
of years now. So Kentucky has the skill people needed to be problematic on offense, but that's where you think Alabama's defensive front, those edge guys, uh, should be able to take care of business.
Yeah, I think you want to make them one dimensional. And going back to Browning, who Alabama really wanted in the recruiting process, really good
Mm-hmm.
player. I think they led for him for quite a while. You definitely want to, you don't want to let him get behind you. He's very similar to Isaiah Bonds as far as speed. You want to keep him in front of you. I agree with doing like you said about the running backs. That's the first goal. They did do a good job against some pretty good running backs: Ole Miss, Tennessee, LSU, and it kind of changes the complexion because, like you said, everybody doesn't have a Daniels to pull it or a Milrow to pull it and run. A lot of it is dependent on their running game, which I think Kentucky is. So I think you stop that run, keep your base defense, and you just play them man to man, and I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, Larry threw for 372 a couple of weeks ago against Tennessee, but Tennessee did a pretty good job on Davis. And that goes back to what Tim said about making Kentucky a little more one dimensional. Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator for UK, an NFL guy. So you're going to see 11 personnel, I think, a good bit. Now, against Florida, Kentucky went with a lot of two tight ends. I think Kentucky just felt like we can push Florida around, with bigger sets. Against the likes of Georgia, I saw Kentucky in a good bit of 11 because they knew they weren't just going to push around that Georgia front seven. So big week likely coming up for the Alabama nickel package once again on Saturday. The Gingerbread Man. How about that for a username? Love that one. Tim, he wants to know. He wants us to name our top 3 holiday movies. Now, is that your alias or something? Because there couldn't be a question more up Tim Watts'
The
alley than this one.
gingerbread man.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Is that a Tim Watts
No, I've
alias?
been. Hey, I'm a little skeptical of that name. I've watched a lot of Halloween and scary movies, and
That's
Gingerbread Man's got a
what I'm
little.
saying. It all lines up.
It's a little ominous right there. Yeah, I mean it's true. We love movies around here. For me, with 3, there's always 3 movies you gotta watch. That's not debatable. It's Elf, it's Christmas Story, and it's Christmas Vacation. Now, I don't know if they're my top 3 favorites, but I love all 3 of them. I've seen them so many times. I tell you, the sleeper one I always talk about, and my family loves it. It's the Four Christmas movie. Four Christmases. Have you seen that, Travis?
It's been a while. That one's
Well,
been out a while, right?
you have got to watch that. That is Vince Vaughn, Reese Witherspoon, all kind of cameos, and I mean, it's got Tim McGraw in it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of got that hokey feel to it. Robert Duvall is in this movie. Like this movie, I doubt the critics loved it, but dude, I'm telling you, it is funny. It is stupid. It'll make you laugh. It'll put you in a good spirit. So that's probably like I have 3 staples. Do you have like a staple you've got to watch?
The Deer Hunter. That's a feel good holiday.
Good, very good.
No, seriously, don't huddle
Back when
around
a
the
movie
family.
was a movie.
Or Bad Santa.
Yeah,
maybe
no.
not that one either.
Hey, it's a great movie.
It is a great movie, but
It's
you're
not a
not
kids
gonna
movie. It's not a
not
little kids movie, but
no.
older kids would like it.
No, I think you hit on them as far as just Christmas movies, holiday movies go. So I wouldn't vary much from you. I'd probably have Die Hard in there, right?
Yeah,
The
I
original.
watch it. Some of them rotate. I've never really got into It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, that's going back away
I just
with
can't. Everybody
Jimmy
loves it. I
Stewart,
just
right?
can't get over somebody's a jerk to Jimmy Stewart. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I love him. I've seen dozens of his movies. I just can't see anybody like firing dude, leaving him in poverty. So yeah. But we'll be talking about those movies more as these holidays emerge and close in on us.
Yeah, and DR back. Speaking of movies, by the way, I did recently screen Killers of the Flower Moon. I enjoyed
Yes,
that. The new
I
Martin
got it.
Scorsese movie.
Hmm.
Um, Leo, De Niro, Lily Gladstone is unbelievable in her
Yeah,
role. Really kind of steals the show, if you ask me. Jason Isbell, Sturgill Simpson. You got the cameos. Jack White. Some musicians of note that show up in this movie as well. It's long. That's always sort of the caveat with Scorsese flicks, right? Long, but really, if you want to see some cinema, that we don't see as much of maybe these days, but also just the storytelling and everything about it, I
yeah.
enjoyed Killers
Yeah,
of the
that's
Flower
that's
Moon.
the thing about movies. They don't really come short anymore. Maybe that's why I like horror movies, but I mean, a kid's cartoon movie should not be 2 hours and 1 minute.
Yeah.
What kid is sitting there for 2 hours and 1 minute? Let's wrap that up at 78 to 83 minutes,
Three
But
hours and nearly 30 minutes. Killers of the Flower Moon goes. And we were about an hour and a half in, and we're in the theater, with the recliners. And about an
oh
hour and a
yeah.
half in, from across the auditorium, I hear, oh boy, across the hall, across the way there, Tim. He was, if he didn't have popcorn for his snack, he was taking it off the ceiling. He was snoring so hard.
Now did you go
I was
tell me?
like, do they
Yeah.
do they rent CPAPs now at the
So
movie
you tell
theater?
me he has sleep apnea. You could have hooked over. You could have
I
saved
was
up.
worried about him. I was like,
Hey,
I,
yeah.
when he stopped snoring, we need to go check on him.
You
But
got to
no,
nudge him. You got to
yeah.
elbow him. Now let
But
me ask
and
you
he did
this.
it. He did it for a solid hour. He was in bed. He was not taking a nap at that point.
He
He
woke
was.
up.
It was yeah,
He woke up like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
He
what's
was
going on?
wanting to know where his robe was and
Let
his
me ask you
shower
this.
shoes by
On
the
the
time he
movies
woke up.
that on the movies that long at the theater, do they still do the intermission? That's what they did when we were growing
They
up. They would just
didn't do an intermission. Now, when we were in Maine recently, we went to this little two theater place in Bar
Mhm.
Harbor, and they sell beer, wine, make pizzas, do the whole thing at this place. And so the movie we saw there was only about 2 hours, but they did do an intermission, which I think is smart. I mean, if you're
Yeah,
trying to push and move sodas and right
yeah.
concessions, hell
I think
yeah.
that link we had the first time I encountered that, I was a teenager watching a movie called Reds with Warren Beatty, and it was not at that age I wasn't into it. But they went to intermission, and I remember thinking like I thought the movie was over, and I was irritated. Like I thought they cliffhung me. I
Yeah.
thought there was a part two of Reds which I didn't need to see, and it's like intermission, fade out, lights on. So I was wondering if they still do that because I don't think I could sit 3.5 hours at a movie theater right now.
Yeah,
That
it
was
was
the
old
home
school.
comfort.
It was throwback. Yeah, I love Scorsese flicks and the performances, the cinema, all of it, the soundtrack. I loved it. But yeah, I'm not built in a way physically where I can sit just about anywhere for more than
No,
a couple hours at a time. So 3.5 is a pretty big ask for my broken down self at this point. Hey, Ghost of Bryant here in the roundtable mailbag. He asked, what are we more likely to see this weekend? A hungover Bama team still celebrating last week's game, who isn't really excited about an 11 a.m. kick, or a hungry team that wants to go ahead and clinch the West by the end of the first half? We just talked about that a little bit, Tim. I'll go somewhere in between because I'm going to give some credit to Kentucky providing
absolutely,
some opposition. I think there is
absolutely.
a scenario where Alabama shows up ready and with the required juice and isn't hungover. But Kentucky is good enough, especially playing at home. The line in this game is only 10.5. You would think that in some corners you hear talk or read things about this game that Alabama's back to being a 22, 25 point favorite in a game like this. It's not. I mean, the expectation for me anyway, Tim, is for Alabama to need to take care of business in the second half again.
Yeah, I think there's a certain filling out process that goes with this Alabama team. You've seen their adjustments have been really great. They did a good job. So I would expect like a safe game plan, probably not one you want to see early on just to fill it out. But I mean, if they're rolling safeties in, they're going to go deep. So this thing can pop off quick offensively. Defensively, I've yet to see them not into a game at the start of a game. I mean, they were fired up. If they're fired up at South Florida, which they were, very motivated defense, ears pinned back. Same thing to every game. Even if they get scored on, the energy's there. They're coming out and playing football and giving 100% effort. So I know the defense will be there like we expect. And the offense, there might be a filling out process and then, try to get, pull away late, or I don't want to say pull away late, but try to a little bit of a slower start offensively to fill them out. But if they leave them open down the field, they'll drop bombs.
Yeah, I think Kentucky's going to be aggressive out of the gate. Like I said, they've already secured bowl eligibility, so they're pretty much
Sure.
playing with house money from that perspective. So they can let it hang out. First and foremost, as I said earlier, you got to tackle Ray Davis from the start. You got to establish early that he is not going to beat you.
Yeah.
And so then you make Devin Leary, and yes, those talented receivers can be a handful. But if Kentucky's going to beat you, that's the way it's got to happen. Alabama's got to continue to do a good job of taking care of the football. We probably haven't talked about that enough.
Limit
That's
the
been
penalties.
a big improvement, as this team is.
Missouri, they got 3 losses, but they're 2. I mean, Kentucky, their losses are to Missouri, Tennessee, and Georgia. Yeah. Missouri's a heck of a football team. Tennessee's definitely a good football team, and we know what Georgia is. So they're not bad losses as far as – now a couple of them got away from them, probably more than they would like, but they're not bad losses in terms of who they lost to. So obviously, motivated. They had 3 huge games at home, I feel like, didn't they? So this would be the 3rd one. So obviously
Florida, Missouri, Tennessee, and Alabama now.
But also you got to think about this. It affects the home crowd. 11 a.m. start.
That helps
3
Alabama.
loss team. You're double-digit coming to Bama. You're not as enthusiastic as a crowd to go, show up for that. And Alabama sort of faced that similar with Arkansas.
Yeah, they did. Major Wood 482 here in the mailbag says Roberts needs an entire segment.
Travis would love that.
Yes, let's do it. Let's just do a Jaeden Roberts pod. That dude was the diamond in the rough and missing piece for this O-line. Crazy how sometimes you don't know what you have standing on the sidelines. Some guys are just gamers. Roberts is a gamer. Actually, if you go back to the 8A game, Jaeden Roberts wasn't a guy that was way up in the mix from the offensive guard perspective, but just watching the 8A game, I did some clips of it back in April. There were things to like about him in that scrimmage. And again, sometimes it also takes a while for guys at that position, a developmental position, Tim, to surface. And it's been big for that Alabama offense. And Major Wood also says Alabama should keep a 3-man rotation at running back. Jam has the juice. He's like a little bowling ball back there. Then we bring in a fresh Williams. Has to suck for a defense to always have to try and tackle fresh running backs. Jace is starting to become one of the most underrated players by Alabama fans in a long time. He just shows up and runs his ass off. Hard to tackle, falls forward, and deceptive speed. It's a nice mix too, right? Not just in terms of skills, but maturity. It's great to have 2 veteran backs, and then you can start sort of folding in those younger backs that have that ability too.
Yeah, and then you add Jalen in there. You know what I mean? You've got a lot of guys. You got what I like about this Alabama offense is a lot of the motion you're seeing, putting guys, stressing the defense, bringing Bonds in motion. That's a problem for a coordinator. You got to figure out what they're doing with that guy. He's got jets. You know what I mean? So a lot of the guys, I think the wide receivers are blocking a little bit better because if you're not blocking, you're not playing. We saw some issues earlier in the year. So a lot of things you can do on the edge. So if you're pressing the edges, blocking well, and with those 3 guys running the ball and Jalen's ability to pull it, you've got a ton of options there. And I agree with Jam. I don't think his running ability is a problem heading into this season. I probably would have stacked him right there with Jason Roydell, if not ahead of them toting the mail, because he is. He looks like the CBS football robot running. He's got big shoulders. He runs. He's got some speed behind him.
Yeah, I wrote about this and what Saban said and what we think it means for Monday. That also, and we're going to get asked about Kendrick Law coming up here in a little bit, but the thing young players need to understand as much or more so than anything else, especially young players at positions that feed special teams like the return and coverage units. You need to try to get on as many of those as you can as a young guy and not just get on them, but be impactful,
Yeah.
because that's where you
Yeah.
initially develop trust
Yeah.
from the coaching staff. If you can be a good special teams player, Jam Miller's been a pretty good special teams player. Kendrick Law's been outstanding. And guess what? Now we're seeing those guys' roles on offense elevated. And I think, too, for Jam Miller, off the ball, pass protection. You saw the big catch he had the other night. Those type of things, other than when you just hand it to him, right? He's getting better and better.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right on special teams, because there's not a lot of glory in special teams, right? We remember Mac had a big hit, Ruben had a big hit, those kind of things. But other than that, we don't remember a lot. You're doing a 60, 70-yard wind sprint into another human being trying to tackle a guy that's trying to elude you. A lot of times you're not even involved in the play because it's on the other side of the field. You're just out there doing gassers. It's like you're being punished. But they see that effort. If you're not giving 100% on those special teams getting down the field,
Why should I play you at running back?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you can't do the small things, you can't do the big things.
Yeah, Jam Miller didn't have a touch against Tennessee, and he made a very nice solo tackle in punt coverage late in
Yeah,
that
you
one
do.
against the Vols. Reginald Shav here in the roundtable mailbag. Do you think Milrow had a hamstring issue as suggested by the bookies? I need to maybe change that to hashtag the bookies weeks ago. And why do you think Alabama waited so long to bring out the RPO game and have Milrow running? Why has it taken Alabama so long to feature Kendrick Law? A lot of whys in there, but I guess at the end of the day, Tim, all that matters is that it's happening at the right time of the season.
I mean, I wouldn't call Kendrick Law being featured right now. I mean, I
He's
would
in the
think,
script, but yeah, he's
yeah, I
not.
don't, yeah,
He's not being targeted 10
he's
times a
not
game.
DiCaprio here, right? He's not getting the co-lead billing, but he is getting more involved. Um, so that I guess that's my first thing is like I think they're like trying to work him in with Milrow. I thought, and I suggested it. He looked like he was hesitant to run. He was stepping out of bounds. I know he's a big, strong kid that can run, so I thought maybe there was something he was protecting. I don't think it's as much as waited so long. I mean, this coaching staff's proved they kind of know what they're doing up at this point. I think maybe Milrow had to get healthy or comfortable, and also you pick your moments. I mean, they knew what they were facing with LSU. They also know what they're facing with other defenses. Take the deep ball away. Well, if they drop them, I mean, Nick Saban and Brian Kelly both talked about this. Everybody said spy them. Well, when you spy Milrow, you're emptier on the back end. You're man to man. That's a lot difficult. You don't have a guy helping, and if you're bringing pressure, it's that same thing. So I think they're evolving and growing into what this team is. I don't think they should have thrown it out the first game. I think they worked into it, and I'm glad to see Kendrick Law getting into the mix.
Yeah, it's a first year offensive coordinator too. So you did have spring practice with Tommy Reese, but spring practice was a lot of evaluating who you've got because you had so much turnover from that offense from a year ago. You're trying to figure out your offensive line. You're trying to figure out which of these two or three quarterbacks is our guy. So that's 15 practices right there. Then you get into fall camp. You still have a quarterback competition that extends into what, the third or fourth week of the regular season. So you didn't know who you were, much less what you were going to do or try to become on a weekly basis. It took really until October for this to really feel like it was headed in a definitive direction. And so, Milrow's stock answer on a lot of this has been, I know I can run. I needed to continue to develop as a passer. I'm sure there's some truth to that. As far as a physical issue, I don't know. Perhaps that was the case as well. I don't think there's still a sort of, big time RPO offense. They run zone read, and they've incorporated some things more so in the short passing game off of RPO and easy touches that has been tremendous. So credit to Tommy Reese for that. And yeah, everybody likes to see Kendrick Law out there, not just because he can make plays with the ball in his hands, but he brings that physical presence to the wide receiver position and the different things you can kind of do with him as a result of that. Bama Lou here in the mailbag. Not sure about any injury. This is his response, I guess, to Reginald Chef. Not sure about any injury, but the plan all along has been to develop Milrow in the pocket. Still more work to do. Running alone is not a recipe for success. Conventional wisdom of Milrow running is not the path Coach Saban chose. I'd like to be able to go along with all that and say this was the plan. It was the plan for Alabama to play Buckner and Ty Simpson against South Florida and let Jalen Milrow watch from the sideline and then go back to Jalen Milrow for Ole Miss. And this is all going according to plan. I don't know if I can buy that exactly, but I do think in terms of some points that Bama Lou makes here, absolutely you wanted to emphasize development in the pocket for Milrow. And yeah, he still has some work to do. But what about you, Tim? Do you think this is all just gone according to plan for Nick Saban and the
No,
offensive staff?
I think this whole thing has just been, he said that I think the coaching staff had questions just like the fan had questions. You don't necessarily know how Jalen Milrow is going to develop over the course of the year. Some guys develop fantastic. Some guys never develop. I mean, I was watching the Zach Wilson kid for the Jets last night. They don't always get better. So you don't actually know till you throw them in the fire. It's like a boxer. You can be great sparring, but when you get in there, somebody's trying to take your head off, it might be a different ball game. So I think Jalen was a work in process. I think the offensive line's the same way. I think we moved parts around to find what they wanted to get. Guys got better. It's not unheard of. I said this before. You have said it. It's not unheard of a freshman to get better. You go from guarding me in Iowa off the edge to guarding Harold Perkins coming as a bandit. I mean, you've got a different skill set you've got to adjust to. So I think they had a plan of figuring this out on the fly. And I think they did a fantastic job offensively. Defensively, I think they had a pretty good idea of what they had and what they wanted to do. But offensively, I think, we've said it many times. You got a first-year starting quarterback. You got a first-year offensive coordinator. Just getting them on the same page and learning and figuring it all out, which I think they did a really good job of.
And it is important for Jalen to continue to develop in the pocket, no doubt about it. But running the football is going to be critical to Alabama's success with him if it's going to get to where it wants to go. He had 20 carries in the LSU game. I don't think they want him to have 20 every game, but in some of these games coming up that entail everything being on the line, if you have to get him up to 20 carries, that's what you're going to be willing to do. Nick's nephew, as we wrap up the mailbag, Tim, is Milrow getting NFL buzz? Do you think there's a chance that he leaves after this season if he keeps improving his play? Man, what a difference a couple of months makes, Tim. This is where we're at, though. He's coming off a huge game. He's got an opportunity down here the stretch to just further cement himself as not just a capable option, but as a high level option at the position.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he would want to go, but I don't think he's ready to go. I haven't really checked on his NFL, his status or any of that kind of stuff. I can't imagine he'd be a very high draft pick right now. I mean, Jalen Hurts was a second round pick with everything he went through. Jalen had film for 4 years in some of the biggest moments. He played in national championship games, SEC championship games. He transferred, he moved different offenses, learn different offenses. He had all of that to go in the second round. So to me, I don't think, the NFL is an option for Milrow right now any more than it was for Jalen, his freshman starting year, or anybody their fresh. I guess Bryce looked like an NFL guy, right? Bryce is
pretty
freshman.
quick.
Well, that was his sophomore
year.
Yeah, that's his first year starting.
Mac.
Yeah, well, so this isn't Jalen's, but his first year starting, Mac, some of those guys. But Mac was a 5-year veteran. So, no, I think Jalen, like you said, I wouldn't consider Jalen a running quarterback, but I do think he's a quarterback that can run. And I think that makes all the difference because you know who's sneaky good running is Patrick Mahomes. Nobody talks about that, but Pat will get you 50 if you mess around in a game. Elusive, move the pocket, and all that stuff, which I think he's doing, and he'll continue to learn. And you know, this is another learning experience chance for him this week at Kentucky.
Yeah, I think Jalen's figuring out too that the longer he's able to maintain passer status on some of these plays, the more it helps him when he does run
Yeah.
because he makes more throws and gets more of that on tape. These defensive backs, linebackers, they have to honor him as a passer as he
And he'll do
moves up.
better. He seems to be better in that pocket too. Stepped up a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, that play in the first quarter we talked about earlier, he stepped into. I mean, it was a mosh pit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? There was 10 guys in that thing. He stepped up, lobbed that little pass over to Jay. So maybe he's coming around in that regard.
Yeah, I think he is. I think it is though.
His
A
development
little
to
bit
me,
early.
yeah, his development to me has been fun from a guy that just drops bombs, you know, to now people going, hey, they can only run the ball. He can't throw the ball. So obviously, if he figures out that middle as consistently as he does the other two ends, yeah, Jalen's going to have a lot of people looking at him for sure.
And the performance against LSU, it just makes defenses coming up, puts them in even more of a bind. How do you defend Alabama now? LSU tried a certain way to take away the deep ball, got punished for it. So how does that impact Kentucky this week? Mark Stoops is a defensive guy, believes in what he puts out there. And so we'll see how the Cats go about it this week. Hey, Tim, that's it for the mailbag. We're just about done here. You got anything else before we make a break?
No, that's it. We'll see next week after the Kentucky game and start moving in on Thanksgiving, right? What are we, 2 weeks
Thanksgiving.
away? 2 weeks away?
You know, the wife has we have to do brunch, and then we also host the afternoon traditional Thanksgiving spread. So she's trying to come up with some alternatives between the two. What about for brunch? She threw out there. I like this idea. Maybe you won't. Turkey pot pie, homemade turkey pot pie.
Absolutely. You know, we used to do tacos at night on Thanksgiving.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
Thanksgiving's
with the
heavy.
turkey. Yeah.
You know, I don't understand. I don't think you can double up on the dressing and the turkey. I can't.
Yeah.
I mean, you got an NFL game at night. We always did some kind of tacos, easy and quick and a little bit different. Then we go back at Thanksgiving dinner the next day. You know, the leftovers.
You know how we tend to go back to the breakfast club here. So as soon as she told me that, my answer was, fix me turkey pot pie.
Look, there's
like
nobody.
Bender's old man.
Me and Mr. Bender love pot pies equally. You know what I mean? I mean, I have a more polite way of asking for my pot pie.
Well, and you and Mr. Bender were also apparently cigar aficionados based on John's arm that we saw there in the library.
John, yeah, he really in Breakfast Club. He really decided to share.
Yeah, he opened up
for a teenager who looked 35. That was a lot of emotions.
Rebellious, angst-filled teen. He did open up a lot there.
Hey, that's a great movie. You cannot watch Breakfast
Holiday
Club
movie.
At every level. It is a great movie.
Oh gosh. All right, Tim. Always a lot of fun with you here on T Watts and TR. Absolutely. So much good stuff with us at BamaOnline.com. You need to get there right now. Join us on the roundtable, the premium message board. Also, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, do it right now. Hit that. Where's that? That little button right there, Tim. Just hit that. And you'll get all of our video content right here at the YouTube home for BamaOnline.com. Look forward to next week, Tim.
All right. See you, man.
For Tim, Travis Reier. Till next time. So long, everybody.